Yeah. So yeah, just to introduce myself really quickly. I'm not related to Ralph Nader, but certainly I'm carrying on that tradition of standing up and fighting for the public interest. Can you hear me?
Can you speak very loudly, please?
Can I speak? I'm speaking loud. I'm very close to the microphone. All right.
Go ahead, Nathan.
All right. Does that sound better? Are we having technical challenges?
We are. Yeah. Here, can you unclip your mic? I know. And it's so dark. Thanks. Okay, where's the output? Where are the speakers? Is there a speaker? Okay, Nathan, could you speak?
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm worried I'm going to get an echo, but can you hear? Is that better?
No.
Hello, hello, hello.
A little bit better.
A little?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Is that better? Hello. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Hello.
Okay, I think that's the best it's gonna get.
Okay, well, I'm going to turn it down so I don't get an echo, and then I'm going to talk loud. Hey, everybody. Now you've been looking at a slide about my pertinence for quite some time, so I think we can, I think you assume you know a little bit about me, that because you have nothing else to look at while we were testing the sound here. But I have been working on right to repair for many years across many different devices. I work for the public interest research groups. If you want to just go to the slide, I'll explain what they are really quickly. PIRG is an advocate for the public interest. As Binseng mentioned, we were started in the 1970s by Ralph Nader, and we speak out for basically the public interest whenever those rights or interests are threatened. We push for common sense, bipartisan policy solutions that advance our rights to pursue our individual well-being and the common good. And this is fun.
Sorry, guys.
And I wanted to start by saying that, as when it comes to right to repair, the first thing that drew us to this campaign was just how much electronic waste that we produce. And so we can go to the next slide.
Oh.
On average, Americans dispose of 416,000 cell phones a day. The global e-waste monitor came out just the other day, 2 weeks ago, and electronic waste is the fastest growing waste stream in the world. It is growing 5 times faster than the recycling capacity. Electronic waste is a global crisis. And it's not just actually the waste problem associated with electronics, it's the manufacturing costs associated with them. If we can go to the next slide, we can see this lake in Inner Mongolia, China, which is all waste, basically off waste from the processing of rare earth metals for electronics. MRIs take a tremendous amount of rare earth metals to build. But so does everything, our smartphones, everything with a magnet or solid state memory. And this is, they call this the Lake of Doom, dedicated to the world's tech lust. And so when we make something, we need to treat it as kind of an important ecological product, but instead we're churning through them at unbelievable rates. You go to the next slide. So we are wasting the planet as well as wasting time and money. So when you can't repair things and you toss them, that causes electronic waste, right? And then you have to buy new things, maybe more things than you would otherwise need to, and you're wasting money. And then when you can't repair things and you have to pay for authorized servicing, that means it's not competitive, and that charge can be whatever the manufacturer sets. And then when you can't waste it, and when you have to wait for a artificially restricted set of servicers, that wastes time. And so we've quantified that a little bit. So we can go to the next slide. Is this working? Are we?
It's as good as it's gonna get.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, the consumers, we found that if consumers were to repair instead of replace their products to get 50% longer lifespan, it would save Americans $49.6 billion per year. And that's just because we churn an incredible number of devices. And if we go to the next slide, we can see that it's not just money, right? It's time. That in fact, farmers lose $4.2 billion a year by losing time in the field because of the restrictions and the artificially reduced amount of technicians that are out there and able to fix farm equipment. And our report calculates that costs American farmers in total $4.2 billion a year. And so what are we doing about it? Mostly we're working at the state level. So we have a map of the states that we've been working on this next slide. And we've been passing laws in the states that cover different kinds of equipment that require manufacturers to give the same parts, tools, and information that they give to their authorized people to the independent mechanics, technicians, as well as the owners of the products. And so this started with cars in 2012. And as you can see, I kind of run down the list here. I don't have to read all these, but we've been getting into more and more kinds of products, wheelchairs in 2022, consumer devices, as well as farm equipment. But yet, to date, we have not extended this to medical devices. And if you go to the next slide, that medical device right to repair has always been part of the right to repair conversation. But during COVID, we kind of got pushed to do a lot more. So we started hearing from the connections we have in the industry that there was a lot of issues servicing devices, because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And OEMs had travel restrictions for their remote servicers. There was additional equipment being pressed into service, things that were coming from the national stockpile, and local technicians couldn't get the PM kits or these other materials necessary to fix them. And the conditions in the hospital were quite, there were people who were working really hard to save lives at this time. So we actually surveyed 222 biomeds and HTMs about these conditions, and we compiled them into a report we released in the summer of 2020 called Hospital Repair Restrictions. And we have a couple slides on some of those findings. 30.4% of the respondents said that they had equipment which could not be used due to the restrictions on parts and service documentation for that equipment from the manufacturers, and 92% claimed that they had been denied service information, just service information for critical equipment over the course of the pandemic to date, which was only like 3 or 4 months in. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So yeah, and then obviously we asked, hey, how important is right to repair to these 222 biomeds? As you can see, biomeds identified this as a critical problem and a critical thing that needs resolution from their perspective in the field of biomedical, medical devices, medical device servicing. Go to the next slide. So one of the things that was really interesting from this report that I hadn't thought, that the time delays that farmers see, those are also things that biomeds are experiencing. And nearly 70% of the biomeds said that they had to delay a patient procedure because they were waiting on a manufacturer or service representative to fix the device. So this is when we say we care about quality. How could you not talk about this? How does this not a negative impact on the quality of healthcare when you have to delay an important medical procedure because the equipment is waiting on a restricted authorized service technician to come in. That seems like a significant issue to me, and significantly negatively impacting patient care. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So we have run a campaign to get more cooperation from these manufacturers. We started with some asking for ventilator right to repair information at the beginning of the pandemic because that was a huge issue. And actually, if you go to the next slide, we made some progress on this issue. We had a whole number of statewide elected officials call, like you can see these are mostly state auditors and state treasurers. Their national association got together with us on this issue. We put a lot of pressure on these companies. If we go to the next slide, and we were told, and it seemed that over the course of the pandemic, some of these restrictions really reversed, that manufacturers were way more cooperative with hospitals and other, frontline medical healthcare providers in order to ensure that equipment was operational and the sky didn't fall. I think that was a good lesson for us. And if we go to the next slide, Senator Wyden introduced a bill in Congress that would open, right to repair basically for medical devices for the duration of the pandemic. And, here's his quote, that this is urgent business, that it's common sense. Let's get the message out from sea to shining sea. Everyone should have the right to repair what they own in the middle of a pandemic. And if we go to the next slide. So what progress have we made and what is left to do? So we have expanded copyright exemption law so that it's not illegal under copyright law to circumvent a digital lock to fix a piece of medical equipment. That was a change that we've advocated for, and hopefully we will retain moving forward. We saw a number of manufacturers be more collaborative with HDOs and ISOs in the course of the pandemic. And we had legislation introduced in Congress and over the country. We also worked to prevent a redefinition of what it constitutes remanufacturing that we felt would be harmful to a robust servicing environment for medical equipment. Go to the next slide. So one of the ways we did that was that we organized US PIRG and IAMers. We organized basically hospital voices. We thought that sometimes with these issues, you have the ISOs on one side and the manufacturers on the other side, and they're kind of lawmakers sometimes see this as, oh, it's just these companies do it this way, these companies do it this way, they're fighting. But the HDOs, the hospitals, can really break the tie. At the end of the day, they're the ones who we've entrusted with our health, and we were able to get them to weigh in against weakening the definition of remanufacturing in such a way that would harm the servicing environment. You want to go to the next slide? And so we would love to get more people engaged. So this QR code takes you to a link where you can sign a letter. I would also encourage people to check out the medical device servicing community, which is aiming to be a collaborative environment between manufacturers and ISOs and HDOs and user groups like ours to come together and to decide how to handle the medical device servicing that protects patients and competition in a robust way. And then if you want to reach out, you can reach me. My email is right there. And that concludes my introduction. I'll hand it back over to Binseng.
Any questions for Nathan at the moment? No questions? Okay. Let's try to move on. Okay. So I'm going to focus on medical device only, and hopefully things will go well. As I mentioned, I'm not going to read all this stuff. I am an infamous person, so there's no need to aggravate you about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history. I'm going to come this way here because the speaker is there, so it's hopefully less disturbing. Here in the United States was the history. The other countries actually have some activities in this area. And then there are some claims that some OEMs have done, and we are going to try to rebut them and some discussions and conclusions. Maybe I really should tell you why this is of your interest. Okay. Earlier, I participated in a session that asked the audience to participate in thinking about what they want to do, what they want to see in 2040. I did not have a chance to speak up at that time, so let me try to do it here. 2040, I'll be 6 feet under and waving to you guys, good luck because you have no jobs. Because by that time, if this thing does not move forward, literally you have no jobs. You'll be doing PMs or ophthalmoscopes, otoscopes, and that's it. Everything else is going to be locked up. If you don't believe me, sit here and listen. Okay. What's happening with the control? Oh, we got a problem. Okay, okay, moving. Okay, the history goes back quite a bit actually. Okay, 1996. Can you dim the lights, please? 1996 was when this whole first thing started. And also, let me make it very clear, not every OEM is our enemy. Not all OEMs want to do things to make our lives miserable. Only a few of them, because as you will see, they have a reason for doing that, okay? And the FDA published in 96 the medical device quality system regulation, which was revised fairly recently. And so this whole thing moved through the years. At that time, several manufacturers already asked FDA to regulate servicing companies and in-house biomed groups as well, but that never passed. So things kept moving and then started to have some movements, including on the level to go to the Supreme Court. Again, I'm going to jump over these things very quickly because a lot of these things are not so impactful until in 2018, the FDA issued a, let's see, report after reviewing the services provided by non-manufacturers and what kind of risk they detected. And they basically concluded there was no significant issue and they refrained from regulating services. In 2018, same year, an alliance of quality medical device servicing was formed by a number of independent service organizations. As you can see, Trimedics, Sodexo, Proctor, Agility, ABM, at that time, that was absorbed later by Proctor and the Intermed Group to start working on this topic because we felt that there are issues that we need to be careful about. In the meanwhile, several attempts have been made by states, including with the help of US PIRG, to get something done, but we could not move this forward, and we are still struggling there. So let's take you to the present. The White House convened a discussion on right to repair on October 24, 2023. So this is very recent, and the FTC, EPA, and several large manufacturers, not necessarily for medical devices, as you heard from Nathan. Apple, for example, participated, and Google, etc. And basically, we are saying that, hey, we need to start looking at this thing. And this is not just about medical devices. This is not just about money issues, but also remember, we are talking about toxic waste and climate change as well, okay, as Nathan said before. And the USPIRG and iFixit made a petition to FTC. I don't know how many of you had actually a chance to participate. So early this year, February, about almost 1,700 documents were submitted to the FTC about this issue. So things are still very much ongoing. And the alliance, as I mentioned before, formed by these companies and two affiliate members, Elite and Avanti, went to the Congress to try to get a right to repair bill introduced in the Congress. And we are still struggling in doing that, but at least we were able to draft a bill to be presented to several representatives, and they showed interest, but we have not yet gotten enough bipartisan support to move this in the Congress. As you know, this is an election year. Things are very complicated in the Congress, so we need help. If anyone here has an uncle, an aunt in the Congress, hey, this is the time to call them. Okay. Future. So where are we going? So at state level, we have made some moves, but are having difficulties. Okay. One of the manufacturers association, biomed, that was including the formerly called MITA group, continue to oppose such a bill, and also several other big tech companies that is outside of the medical device areas are getting together with some farm equipment manufacturers, and they are trying to lobby hard to prevent this kind of things from happening. We have one state only, we have one state only that passed a rule, and that is Colorado, and only medical device that was contemplated in that bill is the powered wheelchair. It's a medical device, it's regulated by the FDA, but that is the only one that is covered by right to repair. So in the Congress, we need to encourage elected officials to introduce a bill. We have lobbied several times with the Food and Drug Administration because they are still thinking about what to do with this remanufacturing issue, which is sometimes what happened in cases that some service companies went beyond the limits of service repair and got into remanufacturing. And one of the questions that we raised during the visit to the FDA, we met the director of CDRH, who actually is retiring now soon. And we asked this simple question. If you accuse us of violating the Constitution of the United States, but you don't allow us to read the Constitution, how can I figure out that I'm violating the Constitution? I'm not smart enough to guess what is in the Constitution. I need to read, understand the Constitution in order to know whether I am within the bounds or not the bounds of the Constitution. And sometimes these kind of disputes may go into the court and ultimately to the Supreme Court, right? So the reason for asking that question is sometimes some manufacturers may say you are going too much beyond the servicing side, but they don't release the service information that tells you what are the limits. And they don't even give you the specifications of the devices that you are trying to repair. So when you don't know what are the limits, it becomes really difficult. It's like you are driving on a road and there's no sign of speed, and then a cop stops you and say, hey, you exceeded the speed limit. But I don't see any speed limit around. Okay, it's not even on the GPS. So what I'm going to do? Okay, so we need to have more clarifications here. Another one is the issue of cybersecurity. As you know, this is becoming a major issue. A lot of hospitals have been attacked, and many manufacturers are using cybersecurity as an excuse to lock up the machine, diagnostic and calibration software. Nowadays, you may be even able to buy or scavenge from another piece of equipment, a board or something, and put into a equipment that you are trying to repair. However, if you have no access to the internal diagnostic calibration software, you cannot make the system recognize the new board that you put in there. So all those things are unfortunately happening, and some manufacturers are charging tens of thousands of dollars per year of licensing for you to have access to that software. And that is why I'm saying in 20 some years, you guys may not have a job because you don't have access to that code. Tough luck. You cannot do anything. Okay. And so we have to advocate for access to the service information, material, and software. So it's, for example, I don't know how many of you folks know, but you should know that CMS require you to perform service on laser equipment exactly as recommended by the manufacturer, just like radiological imaging, etc. But several manufacturers of lasers in the past that I contacted refused to provide that information. I showed them the code from the federal regulation, and they said, no, sorry, we're not giving you. I said, sorry, then I have to take you to the FDA. I filed a complaint with the FDA's Office of Regulatory Misconduct and fingered those guys, okay? And as I said, the Federal Trade Commission now is looking into this because it is considered likely a anti-competitive restraint of trade issue, and it's not safety. Safety is FDA's concern. The FTC's concern is different. FDA has repeatedly said that the right to repair for them in their eyes is not a safety issue, which I don't quite agree, understand, but that's their position. They say it's a competitive issue. You guys go to the FTC and fight there. Okay. So let's take a look what has happening in other countries. Okay. We have this neighbor to the north that we usually consider maybe less developed than us, but however, sometimes you never know. This Northwest territories, I think they should be more concerned about the caribous than people, but and obviously Santa Claus. But they did institute a territory-wide right to repair clause in their purchasing, and that has created some, let's say, conversations with some manufacturers, and they're insisting that. And not only they made that effective in their territory, they now joined forces with the rest of Canada to move something in the Canadian equivalent of the Congress to have a amendment to the Copyright Act. And the Canadian Medical and Biological Engineering Association is officially sponsoring this thing, and they are having some discussions in the annual meeting coming up in Toronto very soon. Another country that often we don't think maybe as developed as ours is called European Union. They may be older, but doesn't matter, right? But in 1993, they issued a medical device directive that you can read here, says that the manufacturer has to provide details of the nature and frequency of maintenance and calibration needed to ensure the device is properly operating and safe. And this same clause was reiterated in 2017 in the medical device regulation. The device directive became an official regulation in 2017, and this same language is still there. However, they have not included the software. So right now, there are a lot of colleagues, friends in the European Union saying that, hey, we are still struggling here because we are being locked out by the manufacturer and have to pay tens of $1,000s per device to get access. So that's something that I mentioned in a article called "The Right to the license to kill is equivalent to what they are doing to us." Okay, and another country that we sometimes say that they're just copycats. The interesting part is that they actually came up with a decree in 2016 saying, basically, if you read in detail the wording here, you see that whoever sells the device in China, they have to provide that information. And this is required by the equivalent of the FDA. It's called State Food and Drug Administration. So why are we lagging behind? Okay, so let's take a look at some of the claims that, again, some manufacturers, not all manufacturers, have made, saying that services should be under the supervision control of the FDA. One of the first one they always mention is safety, because service provided by third parties are unsafe for patients. Well, we are definitely not directly regulated by FDA. I don't know any one of you that have been visited by the FDA except for the recall verification process, okay? Or if you install X-ray equipment. Otherwise, it is not regulated by option of the FDA itself. And so the concern they have is safety. And the FDA, as I mentioned before, did a report in 2018, and the report is to the Congress, it's not to the public, saying that, hey, the objective evidence that they were able to obtain, analyze that many OEMs and third parties entities provide high quality, safe, and effective medical device services. So where is the problem? Okay. And also on-site staff provided by third parties can respond swiftly while waiting for the services technicians may impede timely patient care. This is what we observed during the pandemic. Some manufacturers opened the service information because they realized they could not dispatch their people on time. Regulatory oversight. Again, the accusation is that nobody was looking at these people. Well, not exactly. The ones that are in hospitals are supervised by the accrediting organizations deemed by CMS. But okay, there are certain hospitals are not under even the CMS. For example, did you know the Veterans Administration is not under CMS because they don't get a penny for Medicare, Medicaid, but they do get your tax dollars, right? Okay. So in effect, doesn't matter where you are in-house or you are a third-party vendor, you have to comply with the rules that the hospitals are required by CMS to comply unless they don't want the Medicare, Medicaid money or don't need that. And again, FDA's report saying that the current available objective evidence is not sufficient to impose additional burdensome regulatory requirements. This is basically saying, FDA saying, hey, we don't have resources to regulate this thing. To put something on paper and then not do it is just foolish, okay? And also, several OEMs, as you know well, provide services on equipment manufactured by other OEMs. Okay, it's called the multi-vendor service. So this is not something that is done by just a few third parties or garage-based businesses. Intellectual property is something very often mentioned by some OEMs saying, hey, we cannot open our service manuals. We cannot give you the schematics because that is intellectual property. Well, services is focused on getting the equipment back to specifications, as I said. We're not asking for designing secrets. In the old days, some of you probably old like me, remember companies like Tektronix, etc., HP provided you with the full schematics, because if there is an intellectual property there, they are already protected with patents, etc. And also they are always continuously innovating, etc. So they don't care about that. Cybersecurity is a major issue, as I mentioned before. However, the vendors of services are not really interested in attacking their clients. They are not going to get money that way. They're going to get money by providing services. Attacking their clients or other hospitals is not the way to do business. And also, quite the opposite. If there is a hospital shutdown because of cyber attack, they actually are going to lose business because the patient care is being stopped there. Okay, remanufacturing. This is the issue that I mentioned before. The FDA is still struggling to find a reasonable middle ground to publish something to say, hey, you guys need to stop advancing beyond your rights to repair and stop changing the specifications of the devices. So this is something that we are trying to make some common sense out of this thing. And right now that no apparently consensus had been reached within the FDA to issue that. This is the third year that we are waiting for such a regulation. And also, as I mentioned before, since '93, OEMs are required by the European Union to release this information. So it's very clear that this is not something that will likely create a problem. We don't see that in Europe. Okay, so why are we likely to see this kind of situation in the United States if the manufacturers were required to release some of the service information? And finally, I think this is finally, the manufacturer saying, hey, we are providing the IFUs, instructions for use. AIAT stands for installation, inspection, and acceptance procedure. So we are giving you the information, adjustment, by the way, but that is not including the maintenance services required, okay? So this is still not enough information for us to really do a good job in terms of protecting the patients in terms of safety and also make sure they get prompt care. It's not enough just to keep the equipment safe. If the patient does not get diagnostics from the imaging department or laboratory department, the whole care of the patient is going to be delayed and suffered. Okay, so let me try to move to discussions and conclusions and then let you ask questions. Okay, it is really nothing to do with patient safety or well-being, unfortunately. Okay, bottom line is this is all about money. Okay, the pandemic showed very clearly when they were not able to go out and they knew that it was going to bring them a lot of legal problem challenges as well as bad publicity, they released the information and the hospitals went ahead and fixed the ventilators, etc. So, hey, if that was possible during the pandemic, why now, after the pandemic, this is not possible? Has anything changed substantially since then? Okay, so this is going to be a long and arduous war, not a battle. Okay, and what we are really trying to achieve is really not to impose things on the manufacturers, because that is not the end of all things if we just get a unilateral thing. What we really want to do is try to get to a point that we can have to sit down and have a memorandum of understanding, very much like the car repair shops that have access to the diagnostics of the car to tell you, hey, your red light on the dashboard tells you that something is wrong, and you can go to a Pep Boys or Meineke, whatever you, and they can plug in a box there and see, oh, you need this, or your gas tank cover was not properly closed, and that's why there is a problem showing up on your dashboard. It does not necessarily make you go back to the dealer and wait, etc., to get your car fixed. Okay, so let's try to work together. Unfortunately, the collaboration effort that was encouraged by the FDA, that was started and had lots of participation from in-house people and independent service organization, saw the biomed and several manufacturers withdraw from that effort, so much so the FDA officially declared that it's no longer an accepted collaboration effort. So we are now trying to do things really by ourselves, unfortunately. And so I'm quoting John Lewis here, the former congressman, get in good trouble, necessary trouble, and help everyone around the world to get the right to repair, because this is what we need to do, not just to protect your job, to be honest, because I hate to say, you're looking at the old person here, and we are all getting older and older, and we are going to have more and more need of healthcare services. And if this happens to you and your loved ones, family, friends, etc., this is going to be a heck of a situation. So takeaways, what we are trying, the message we are trying to convey, it is not just to save money, as some people are saying, okay? It's to improve patient safety, care quality, and timeliness. And also, as mentioned by Nathan and me before, toxic waste and climate change. Of course, we don't dump so many medical equipment in the trash today as much as compared to cell phones, laptops, etc., but it's still a very significant amount, okay? And commercial for this afternoon session, if you come back and attend our session this afternoon, we are going to show you that our statistics show something that we knew all by instinct, but we have data to prove that we can extend the lives of many, many pieces of equipment for many, many years, typically more than double the amount of time the American Hospital Association published that depreciation table. So why are we tossing away things that we can effectively keep working safely and effectively for our patients? And as I mentioned before, the right to repair has been mandated in other countries, EU, China, etc. Canada is on the same path. Australia is considering that as well. And for years, and there's no real negative impact on their revenue and profit margin. Okay, they keep coming up with new technology. They will sell new technologies and even service contracts. So perfectly fine. We can deal with that. Okay, we can work with that, but it's not a free-for-all. We need to be responsible to do the right things. Okay, and we need to even finger out people, not necessarily competitors, even quote our friends, okay, who are doing the wrong things. Because at the end of the day, it's for the entire society, people that we are trying to make things safe. It's not just, oh, you do whatever you want, it's your problem, it's not my problem. No, we are all in this together. So we must work together to find a safe, balanced, equitable solution, okay? And the patients include, at least I consider myself a patient. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but hey, sooner or later, that's going to come around. Thank you. Here's my contact information. Many people contributed to this. Not all things are came from me. So